Hi everyone. Welcome to the second Archimaker's question event. I'm Anton and I'm an Archimaker, and I'm so pleased to have John McElgunn with us today of Rogers, Stirk, Harbour and Partners. John was originally from Ireland and he's a partner at RSHP. He has worked on many projects, including the Leadenhall Building, the Library of Birmingham, One Hyde Park, Neo Bankside, and the British Museum extension. So, John, firstly, I've seen earlier that you have your tea and biscuits.
I do.
I have my tea.
And thank you for having me, Anton. And thank you for your introduction. That's super.
So these are a few questions I have for you. What inspired you to become an architect?
I think a teacher, actually, really. I wasn't particularly brilliant at school, but one teacher in my primary school was always very positive about my drawings and used to pin them up and used to tell my parents how good they were. They probably weren't, to be honest. And then a teacher in my secondary school, where we were doing technical drawing, kind of fine line technical drawing, he suggested that I should study something called architectural technology. I didn't even know what it was. But I was really good at drawing, and it was like my best subject, so it made sense. So I started that way, and so it kind of happened by accident. I didn't really wake up one day and think, oh, I'm going to be an architect. It kind of happened in steps. So I'm going to say a teacher inspired me.
That sounds like a really good step-by-step way, like how you became an architect. So what was your favorite book that inspired you early in your career?
Well, again, because I'm not a huge reader. I was dyslexic at school. I'm still dyslexic, but I think you get a bit better at it. But one of the books that I loved was from a firm called Future Systems, and the books were called Inspiration, and they were just picture books. And they were just, if it was a boat or a car, it might not be the whole boat or the whole car, just a little bit of a detail. And I just really liked that. I got the obsession of looking at how things went together and how they worked. So I really liked those. I used to flick through them all the time for inspiration. And then there was another book called The Fountainhead, which is about this kind of hero architect who sets these really high standards for himself. It's quite a thick book, and it's quite a thick read. But I really got into it, and I read it really easily, despite being dyslexic, I think because I love the subject. And so, yeah, Fountainhead and Inspiration.
Cool, those sound like really good books. So what was your favorite project that you worked on?
That's easy, actually. As you said in your introduction, I have worked on lots of different buildings, but I worked on one in particular, and it was nearly 7 years from start to finish, all the way through from when we first met the client to actually before we even had the job to when people were moving in and using it. And it was an extension to the British Museum in London. And I worked with some great friends on it, and a lot of the people that I met through that period of time became really good friends, and we still see each other. So British Museum extension.
That sounds really cool. I've been to the British Museum, and it looks really good. So we're all spending more time at home than ever before. What is it that you love most about your home that gives you a sense of well-being?
I think my garden. We have a tiny little, like a classic London garden. It's, what we would call a kind of postage stamp, but it's really beautiful. It's got a cherry tree and a beautiful orange canopy under it. And since we've been locked down with my little 3-year-old daughter, we've watched it go from being a winter tree to it flower and bud. And we just harvested the cherries last week. So we're looking at the cherry tree all the time, spend loads of time outside. And also being at home all the time means I'm not doing my commute into London every day. So I've been spending more time kind of just walking in our local parks.
Yeah, it's always good to stay healthy whilst we're in lockdown. Even
exactly.
If it's hard to do so. So we're all in secondary school and primary school. What suggestions would you give us to explore our interest in architecture?
I think the big one for me, Anton, I would say is to keep drawing. Like, in primary school, you spend so much time drawing. It's part of the curriculum. And then somehow when all the maths and physics and geography and all that stuff gets a bit more serious, the drawing seems to disappear. And I would say draw and keep drawing and never be embarrassed. The number of people I meet in meetings, if I'm drawing something or we're having a discussion, and you draw something on the table or even on the back of an envelope, the number of people that say, oh, I used to love drawing, and they somehow just forgot and they stopped. So keep drawing, and they don't need to be beautiful. Some of the best architects and some of the best artists actually don't do beautiful drawings, but they can express themselves and they can communicate an idea.
So thank you so much for answering all our questions. Can you please show us a little bit more of your favorite project?
Sure. So I'm gonna show you that extension to the British Museum that I mentioned. So I'm going to share screen now. And will you tell me if you can see? There you go. So you should be seeing. Is that working?
I can't see it. Oh yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, fantastic. So the building on the right-hand side, the kind of the much newer building, this is the building that we designed and built. And one of the main challenges, really, Anton, was we were sitting next to a really old building. And as you know, in London, we've got lots and lots of beautiful old buildings, but people get really sensitive if you want to put something new next to them. So the building on the right-hand side, the one that we did, is going to be 100 years younger than the one on the left. The one on the left was finished in 1914, and ours was going to be finished in 2014. And so we were trying to figure out, how do you make like a younger brother or a younger sister that's kind of respectful, but maybe a little bit cheeky, and be respectful of the bigger brother, but definitely hold their own place on the street. And what you can see on the right here is about 1/10 of the overall building. So there is, if that's kind of one building, there's 4 behind it and there's 5 more in the ground. So it's quite a big building, but it only has a small bit out on the street. So this image here is looking down on the British Museum from above. So if you've been, Anton, you probably went in from the south through the great portico and into the huge, what they call the Great Court. And our site is in the top left here, surrounded in orange. This kind of really weird little 6-sided shape, completely surrounded by Grade 1 listed buildings. So the buildings in London that are more heavily protected than anything else. And we were given this, what we call a brief, or basically the stuff that goes into the building. So what had to go into the building was logistics. So see this guy here in the blue t-shirt, his name is Bob, and he's pulling out this huge blue case out of the back of a truck. As you can see, you know, he's working quite hard. And inside that blue case, or over here on the third images, are some of the 2nd century terracotta warriors from China. It's the first time these warriors had ever left China, and the British Museum asked to borrow some in 2007. And so he's pulling these guys out of the back of a truck. It's not that easy. He's obviously very skilled, so they don't get damaged. But this was part of the way they used to work. So there's logistics, there's storage. The museum has something like 10 million objects, so there's never enough shelves and stores. So we were doing lots of stores. We were doing a place for them to do special exhibitions. And this image on the top right is in their science and conservation department. It was in a basement, very poor lighting, very small doors. So across the bottom, you see this huge new truck lift, loads of new storage, an exhibition space with a Viking warship in it, and some of the workshops that I'll show you a little bit more of. So we kind of basically upgraded what they already had. How do you start to design a building? You start with some really simple drawings. So this drawing here was just looking at the site, where the sun comes up, where the trees are, where other people's windows are, just trying to understand the limitations of the site and maybe what we could achieve. And then looking at the building from Montague Place on the north, our problem was, you know, that big building that I said was 100 years older, 1914, that was that big, huge kind of white block. And we were adding over here on the right-hand side, actually where the 2 little Georgian houses and the trees are. And we were worried about how you add to something that's big and formal and symmetrical like that. And again, a few simple drawings, just, well, do we pick up the color of the museum? Do we pick up the color of the adjacent kind of brick buildings, lots of brick buildings in Bloomsbury, and that kind of beautiful dark stock brick? Is it a bit smaller? Is it a bit lower? How do we make a respectful addition to the street? And this was a drawing I worked on with my friend Nick, and it took ages to do because it was trying to get all those qualities across. So you can see the beauty of this big King Edward building. We're just here on the right-hand side. And you can see some of the things that we've done from those previous sketches. So we're the same color. So we've picked up on the white color of the stone. You might not see it in this diagram, but there's all of these layers and layers of of stone, the way you build a building. So it makes it very horizontal. And we wanted to pick up all on those lines. And actually, this building has some quite clever tricks as to how it hides people away. So you wouldn't believe it, but there's actually a library up in this space, and it's hidden behind this huge kind of stone portico. And we wanted to hide people away because it's a private building, but we wanted to do it in a different way. We wanted to allow light in, but not views in. And so we were playing with the materials and kind of how we would piece all this together. So I'm going to zoom in now on this little piece here. And this is what we actually did. So we chose a stone that came from exactly the same place as this stone came from on the left. So this is Portland stone, comes from Dorset. And we chose the same stone, same quarry, but from a different bed. And I'll come back and tell you a bit more about the glass in a minute. And so zooming in on the stone, you see it has all these beautiful little creatures, all these millions and millions of little fossils. So these fossils effectively lay on the seabed in the English Channel about 20 million years ago, and it became limestone. And all the creatures got washed away, but the stone stays behind, and the shape of the fossils got left behind. And rather than doing a really intricate building or lots of kind of fluting and sculptures, as you can see in the reflection up here on the left, we just wanted to use big stone panels, and the decoration of the stone becomes all these beautiful little creatures. They're called turreted gastropods. I had to learn that off. So then the glass, which is trying to, as I say, hide some of the activities inside, but let lots of light in, let views out. And you see these little horizontal lines that run across the glass. They're a drawing of the coastline in Dorset, where the stone came from. So the glass makes a direct relationship back to the stone, and the stone makes a relationship back to the 100-year-older building. So in measures, we're trying to make as many connections as we can. And so then what's inside the building, and we were talking about Bob and all the objects and storage and conservation. So in this diagram here, you can see this big double height space in the middle is the exhibition gallery. So that changes every few months. Down here in the gray is the logistics. So logistics is basically moving things around and carting and ferrying. And you can see there's a truck driving through down there. Below the logistics, 3 levels of storage. So lots and lots of objects. And then up on the top in the kind of what's colored blue here are the conservation studios. So we put the people up at the top so they can be under roof lights and get direct light. See the little diagram on the left? Direct sunlight in through the roof. In order to build this building, we had to make a huge hole, an absolutely enormous hole that you can see here. And whilst digging the hole, we found things like some remains of the Civil War wall from the 17th century. We found some dinosaur bones. And all the time that we were working here, we were working under all of these galleries were active. So we had to be very careful. The building was only allowed to move a millimeter while we did all this work. Then down in the basement, loads and loads of storage, 3 levels of storage. And actually it'll take about 300,000 objects. It'll take so many objects, it'll take the museum about 8 years to fill the basement. So that's some views of the basement. The other thing in the basement is the Science and Conservation Centre. So you see in this drawing here, there's daylight coming in through a roof light at the top, although it's effectively level with the ground. And the really serious science equipment is down in B3. So although this space is below the ground, you can see how much daylight is coming in. And this is the scientists, the library here, their kitchen is downstairs, meeting rooms and office space. Now, you see the little section on the left, the red line just shows you where you are coming up out of the ground. So this is that logistics level. So back to Bob. Big truck lift in the corner over there. The road is running through. And this level of our building connects all of the object movement from the old basement into our building and into the secondary building. And the way we get things in and out, rather than having to ask Bob to drag them off the back of a truck, is there's this huge truck lift on the front right corner. So here you can just see layers of storage in the 3 lower basements. And here on the right hand side, you should just be able to see a little vehicle. That's a kind of 16-meter long truck. The way it works is the truck arrives, there's nothing there. This huge thing pops out of the ground. It swallows the truck and the truck disappears back downstairs. So in about 3 minutes, the truck disappears and then it's down here. And now Bob, rather than having to pull things off the back, can drive up to it on a forklift, take it off really carefully and drive it through all 3 levels of basement or into the existing building. And if it's raining, it doesn't matter because it's undercover. If it's a sensitive object, it doesn't matter because they can change the temperature. Then on the outside, when the truck's not there, you just close the gate. There's this huge piece of granite on the top, and you don't even see it. It's like Tracy Island from Thunderbirds. So there you see the rest of the building, the older building from 1914 and our building sitting next to each other. If we come up another level here, just look at your diagram on the left. This is a special exhibitions gallery. When we handed it over, it looked like this. Sorry, just pausing for the drawing. Huge space, really flexible. You can do whatever you want in there. The floor is heavy enough that you could drive a tank on it. You can hang things off the ceiling, off the walls. So basically it allows the museum to exhibit anything they want. That's what we always said. You can do anything you want, from the smallest piece of jewelry to the biggest thing. And they took us at our word, because for the very first exhibition, the image on the right, they exhibited a 37-meter long Viking warship. So this warship was 1,000 years old. It's nearly 100 feet long. And it was the biggest thing ever shown in the British Museum. And they wouldn't have been able to show it if we hadn't designed and built this huge gallery for them. So then you can see over here on the left, the kind of smaller things on display, jewelry and artifacts. And last summer, they did this huge Rodin exhibition showing his sculptures and sculptures from Greece side by side. And they kept that end wall open, because the end walls allow daylight in if you want them. Then up another level and you get to where all those conservation studios are, up at the top of the building. And these are these fantastic workshops. So they could be working on anything from an Egyptian coffin to a Polynesian sail or a Greek statue here. And you'll see all the furniture, it's all on little wheels. And all of these extract arms and plugs and all of the tools and equipment, they all hang down from the top. And so if you want to move all the furniture around to work on something much bigger, you just move all the furniture. So you're constantly reconfiguring it. So it's like a mechanics workshop, but rather than for cars, it's for objects from the museum. And then that's a view of the kind of finished building from the outside, people strolling past. The sun has come around to the west now, so you can see it's looking even whiter than normal with the sun reflecting on the glass. And here you see these louvers on the western edge. They prevent sun from going into the building to prevent something that we call solar gain, which makes buildings too hot. And a garden on the left-hand side planted around that science atrium roof light. So lovely new trees for all of the people in our building and the building next door to look out on. And then that's it kind of seen at dusk, lit up from within that kind of glass skin, sitting next to its older brother.
Thank you. So, I think we have time for like 2 questions for people that people can say in the comments. But in the meantime, I have a question.
Okay.
We've been learning about sustainability. Can you tell me how the building is sustainable and energy efficient?
Sure. So what we did here is we tried to make sure any energy that we use to run the building, that we captured it and we didn't waste it. And so, for example, if you warm up your living room and then you open the window, all that hot air is going to the outside. And so any of that air that we had tempered or conditioned within the building, we made sure we kept it. And although a lot of the scientific processes need the window open because they need ventilation, there's ways of capturing that air. We also have PVs, or photovoltaic cells on the roof, so they capture sunlight and turn it into energy. And then we also have a green roof where it expands biodiversity. We've got beehives on the roof where we make honey for the British Museum, not enough to sell in the shop, but honey nonetheless. And so all of those things together help to make the building more sustainable. And of course, making sure that it's really, really well insulated, so you don't lose heat by accident.
Okay, so we have a question from Connor that was also used last week, but I guess we can use it this week as well. When you've made a building, do you ever think about how you could have made it differently?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I suppose we're always trying to examine if we've done a really good job and if we could have done it better. And I suppose in some ways we were lucky here that this one took so long, that we spent a lot of time working really closely with the client to understand the things that they needed from the building for it to work, and so that we could make sure that we delivered that. But if I was being if I was being really truthful, there must be things that we'd like to have done better. But off the top of my head, I can't think of one. I mean, maybe it would have been nicer if we finished it quicker so they could move in earlier. So we're always examining that question of could we made it better, but it helps sometimes when it takes a long time.
Thank you. So, thank you, John, for joining us.
Well, thank you, Anton.
And thank you for everybody who joined us at home. I hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as I did. If you'd like to do a drawing of the British Museum project, please email it to us, and we'll send it to John also. So, thank you, and bye.
Thanks, Anton. Bye.